It's such a pleasure to be a part of these conversations. I have listened to incredibly interesting people.
All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Ruth again here. Today, I have only one panelist because of unavoidable circumstances. We had to reschedule so that we have all the panelists next when we give out the date. But today, I'm gonna let Sean talk with us on the topic about synergies with advocacy and education. My name is Ruth. I'm the founder of Step Up for Autism. I have a son. He's 11, almost turning 12 this month. And he's 11. He's nonverbal, but I say he's pre-verbal because even if he doesn't talk, I know he understands a little bit. So it's kind of talk I have to know just what he's saying. It can be through pictures, through gestures, through his cries, through his eye contact, though he doesn't do well with eye contact. So I'm going to let Sean introduce herself, and then we can do a little bit of talk here before we head on. Welcome, Sean.
Thank you. Good morning, Ruth. So I am, as Ruth said, I'm Sean Richardson. I am living in San Diego, California, and I have 3 sons. My oldest is 26 and has autism. He was diagnosed at 3. So I have lived a long parenting journey. I'm still living it. I mean, he's still a young man with autism. And my journey, excuse me, Ruth, my focus, my interest is on the caregiver, actually the mother. I am a life coach and work with parents of children with special needs, particularly mothers, and work with them on all kinds of issues. And typically these issues will be, she is running a story in her head, a misbelief or a misunderstanding about her circumstances that are her family circumstances that are really getting in her way or her child's way of a quality life. So we deconstruct that whole narrative that she's got going on in her head, which is typically based on, to dive deep into the psychology right away, which is typically based on some fear she has about herself, to be honest. So I really enjoy helping moms free themselves from any misbeliefs and misunderstandings they have running in their own minds about what they should be doing as a parent of a child with special needs.
Thank you so much. That's really interesting. So we're gonna talk about the synergies between with education and advocacy. Why don't you dig on that a little bit?
So advocacy, it is, when I think about my own child's life, the most important experiences that he has had that have contributed to his growth have come about because of my efforts, not necessarily because of some programs I saw that I signed him up for. They're typically been experiences that I pushed to create or collaborate with other moms to create, and that were actually driven out of a great deal of self-interest. I thought they would be helpful to my son. Today, so my son is now 26 and he is out of education. He's actually a young working adult now, a whole nother stage to discuss. But when I look now at some of the most interesting things happening in my community, again, it's the moms, it's parents who are creating these options, and lots of interesting inclusion programs. And so anyway, advocacy is typically the mom. And then there's also the legal advocacy and then working with the school district in the IEP process. So we're at a very interesting time, Ruth, because at least in California, we just learned that schools will not be opening this fall, period. All learning in San Diego, at least, actually, I think it's in the whole state of California, will be from home. And this is just a profound challenge for parents of children raising special needs. We have jobs. We have other children we're raising. We are not necessarily teachers. Our kids require very specialized skills for their learning. So this is a big concern, disappointment, fear, reality that moms are facing. And it's also, it can be very overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you, with your journey, have you dealt with parents who are raising single kids that are going through grief or through separation?
Have I worked with parents that are going through grief or separation? Yes, I have. I am actually one. I am not in my grief and separation now, but I did. I was married for 22 years and went through a divorce 6 years ago. Charlie, my son with autism, was 18 at the time. So yes, I have worked with parents on grief and separation. And if I am honest, a lot of the parents who are married feel very alone, separated, and full of grief in their marriage. They feel disconnected. They feel alone in the job of parenting.
So now that they've closed schools in California and a period until further notice, how are the parents doing this? Like at home, I know that's why sometimes it's good to get a little bit of training if possible. What would you tell parents who feel like they have a lot of challenges at this time?
Yeah, so the first thing I'm going to tell parents is, read what the recommendations and guidelines are. You do not need to kill yourself trying to meet them. So read what the guidelines are, and then layer on top of that the reality of your family. And I would also pause. So there are lots of, learning and hours spent on certain issues, guidelines. So take that all in. But above that, pause for a moment and say, we're in this incredibly unique time. And hopefully the only time we will be experiencing this in our lives. So how is this happening for me instead of to me? So when you are living life from this view of it's happening to me, that's a very victim consciousness. But if you really flip that around and say, what is my opportunity here? How is this happening for me? That's looking at life from an empowered position. Oftentimes inside of a parent, there's a voice that she's got a hunch of an idea or a need that her child needs. This could be the moment to focus on that hunch or that need. So maybe, the curriculum is going to be about, I don't know what it's going to be, learning to some reading skills. But inside of you happen to see that your child is particularly motivated in another area right now. Maybe it's life skills. Maybe it's motor skills and being outside and riding your bike and developing other skills. Go with that. Go with the interest and the motivation of your child, and have the courage to follow your own inner intuition. Another thing that's happening, because this is very new news here, so it's unfolding right now. What started happening as soon as this announcement was made is moms started, these would be moms of typically developing kids, started immediately forming pods. So groups of 4 or 5 were reaching out to each other, and these were self-selecting groups of saying, okay, well, we've got to create a team. It's a germ bubble, if you will. We'll all be we'll all follow we'll expose ourselves to each other and be very careful about our exposure, outside of this group. I'm speaking in terms of the virus. And together we'll band together as a group, and our kids will learn. They'll have some social interaction. We can hire a tutor to help support, because the parents can't do it all. So the moms are really rallying and creating this interesting model. Well, guess who is being left out of that? The children with special needs are not getting the phone calls to join the groups. So the moms of those children have an opportunity to come together and create pods for themselves if they think that would be of benefit. And what might that look like? Well, maybe there's going to be a pod around, going to the park, not around reading. Or maybe there's going to be a pod around listening to music. Maybe, I don't know what the moms will come up with, but they can create their own kinds of support groups within this new temporary structure. So in California, we know that we will be homeschooling until December.
Oh, yeah. I think here in Florida, they're opening school. So I have a question. I know you've been to Kenya. Was it before you had Charlie or after you had Charlie?
Charlie came to Kenya with us. All of my sons came to Kenya with us. He was, gosh, how old was he when we were in Kenya? We've been to Kenya a few times. He was 10, and, very much, his autism was very much a part of the trip. The most challenging part of having Charlie with us in Kenya was his diet, feeding him. So.
Yeah. And, for me, I would say when I had my son, I was in the islands, the US, the territory, but they really didn't have services for him. Like they had to get a doctor from Puerto Rico to come and diagnose my son, just to say, oh God, he is autistic. But the school didn't even realize he was autistic, only one teacher. And then that's how our journey began. So even after the diagnosis at 4, when I went back, there was no classes, or separate for just teaching them. They didn't have that qualification or qualified people that could deal with children with autism. So we stayed there until when he was almost 5. And I decided, you know what? I have to leave for him and for me, but mostly for him, because he needed a lot of service. And, coming here to, even in Florida, it took a long time before he got services. They put him in a school. The first time they didn't have any therapies in the first school. Then I had to wait for months, like almost 6 months. When he got then finally got speech therapy and OT, but only for a few hours. Then they were worried because he was not eating. So he would only go to school for 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Then I had to go pick him up because they were like, oh, he doesn't eat. We are afraid we can't keep him the whole, because he's hungry the whole time. So I had to pick him up. Then it took me almost another year to get him to a school that had a class, one stream that had autistic children, and it was all a mix. But they would all mix when they have like recess. Then we had to wait again for almost another 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was getting 30 minutes of speech and 30 minutes of OT. It was not enough.
Right.
Now years are running. So he's almost 7, nothing. We're still struggling. As they say, even here, we still have to fight for services. It's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time he turned 8, finally he got the clinical setting where now he is. So you see, we have a very long gap before he really got actual services. Even if he had everything that he needed, but still there was a long waiting list.
Right.
Like you can wait for 6 months, they tell you, oh, we can't have him, he's above the age, or after this, or we have to. Oh my goodness, it was never an easy journey with my son. So when he started actual clinical setting therapy, it was about, it's now 2 years now. This So you see, it is almost 11. So it's
Right.
just like he started when he was 8 years. Even if a little bit of here was just us, you know, it was always the I don't know how long in California you have people waiting for therapies, or for help, because here, yeah, Florida took so long. Then I traveled with my son to Kenya the first time. It was I remember we took public means because I wanted him to experience. I wanted to see if he could overcome his sensory, so we took public means to home in Eldoret. And the stigma and the still, these people kept looking at me because he kept on crying and doing
Right.
things. And when we came out of the of the public means, he wanted to go, help himself, go to the restroom. And because he just, as soon as he stepped down, he just moved his pants and peed over there. And the gentleman came to me later and told me, oh, you have to teach your son some manners. He can't just pee over here. And I waited. I was so overworked. I was just livid. I was looking at him, but I was waiting for my son to finish what he was doing. Then I took my son, told my daughter, hold my son for a little bit. Then I went to that gentleman. I think it's also my reaction, because I was so angry. I just told him, next time, if you can ask me, you can be patient and ask me something, but don't come to me. And you've been looking at me in the van all through. Did you ask me if I have a problem? He's like, oh, you can't do that. You have to teach your son this. So I tried to teach him, at that moment, what autism was. And it was really, when we went back to the van to start our journey. Now the people were in front of me and sitting behind me started listening to what I'm saying. So they were like, what is that? So I started explaining. So it became like I was educating the people and they asked so many questions,
Right.
And even in the journey, they, some of them started praying for you. And they were like, okay, I think maybe it's something that happened with the family. I'm like, no. But you just have to let them have that, questions, and you try and answer. So it's not been an easy journey. Yeah.
No. So as I listen to you, oh wow. I mean, I absolutely understand the whole journey of education and the receiving of services. I mean, we have been through so many phases in my son's 26 years of that. And it's always changing and evolving. So I really relate to that, and the building of all those services, and the waiting for those services, and the requesting of those services. And then when you don't get enough of what you're looking for, you have to figure out how you're going to supplement it on your own. I mean, that whole journey. But one thing that you say that I am actually delighted to hear, it delights me that people asked you questions about your son.
Yeah.
Culturally here, I think we teach our children, you see it all the time, and I am guilty of this too with my own children when they were younger. My sons are all young adults now. I have 3 sons. Don't stare. If there's a child who or someone, any individual that stands out in some way in a crowd because of their behavior or the way they're looking, and our children are looking at that person, you'll hear a mother say or a father say, don't stare. Don't stare. And I have said that to my children. It's rude. And I get the sentiment of that, but wouldn't it be more interesting to say, and that creates fear, right? Don't look. The underlying message is, ignore it, separate it. They are other. So just pay attention to your own little world here. It would be better. It would be so much more healing in this world if we taught our children, instead of staring, say hi, right? Instead of don't stare. What if we encourage them to go say hello? Can you feel the whole energetic difference there? Don't stare. That is like fear. We're separate. It's dividing.
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
If we encourage, go say hi, that is a whole energy of compassion and curiosity and questions. I want to learn about you. Hi. And so I really love that was some of your experience. Now, I'm sure some of the questions were challenging and judgmental.
Yes.
And be very triggering for us as parents. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I know but you see, but even when we reached up at the countryside, we found that the adults the kids actually were more, they would come and, very curious, but then you'll find that the adults were always at the fence, always peeping, you see them calling each other. So it was always like the children were the ones who would come. And after maybe 3 days staying at the countryside with the cows and goats, and they started imitating what I would, when I was talking to my son, like I would call my son, come. And they will be there so early in the morning, like maybe 7 o'clock. And we are like, wait, what are they doing? Then they start calling my son. And you'll hear, come. You see, they're children, but now they're learning through, now my son was wondering, they're all talking to me. So they start playing with him. But the parents would just be like standing on the corner, even after telling them, they'll always be staring. But the kids were always involved. We found the younger children were always willing to, play. Yeah. And he loved that because he was always going round and round, playing the whole day, and he never wanted to stay indoors. And I think for me, taking my son in Kenya with that environment, he loves that.
Yeah.
I think we don't have it here where, he was like so fascinated with the chickens, the cats, all these things, all these animals. He was just like, I think, and that's why I like going with him to Kenya, because it's a different, he's not flapping a lot. He doesn't make so much noise. I don't know if it's the environment or it's the food, but something about Kenya, that boy, when we're in the countryside.
Yeah, there's just, he feels a lot of freedom. And
yes.
Yeah.
When you call him for a minute, he'll just come, drink water and go back. You see him in the field with the cows. And I was thinking in my head, but he has no sense of danger. Like, okay, this is, I can get close. But he, it was always like somebody had to be there to watch him, because he would always go and hold the tail. He thinks that, oh my God, it's very interesting seeing the tail move back.
I mean, I just celebrate his freedom just to be, just to be who he is. And he will, our children, I wish for them more of that freedom. I wish for the parents more of that freedom. I want to share a story with you from my parenting journey that happened very recently, actually. But if they had more freedom, in addition to the freedom just to be who they are, just to be accepted, and we make room for them in our society just as they are, then they're also going to be growing and learning and evolving always. And I wish that we could make space for both. We really have this message of there's an urgent need to fix them and make them as much like us as they can be, and that's just the wrong message. Period. It's just if I have learned one thing in 26 years, it is that. I wanted to share a story about. We were talking about other parents judging our children. And in my case, my young adult. And I found myself, if I'm going to be very honest about this, I would notice parents judging my child. Do you want to know the truth? Do you know who was judging him the most? It's me. And I will give you an example. So my son really loves to golf, and we go golfing. He has a very funky form, but he gets the ball on the green all the time. So they put him, I go in the cart with him. I don't always golf, and they will put him in a foursome with, other people that he doesn't know. So I am super sensitive when he meets these other people golfing. And so this just happened recently. He is very talkative, very expressive, and unfiltered. So first of all, in golfing, you don't talk a lot. It's a very quiet sport. And here comes my son, and right away that he has an issue. And I'm thinking, oh, these people are already dreading the fact that my son, I am concluding that these people are dreading the fact that my son is going to be golfing with them. Uh-huh. So I'm judging Charlie right there. I made that up. I don't know what they're thinking. And then when Charlie's talking to them constantly, like they'll swing and they'll miss the ball. And so normally the etiquette would be, you just don't say anything to the other golfer. Charlie gets right in there and says, keep trying, keep practicing. He'll really focus on the fact that they just missed the ball. And I'm like, okay, Charlie, okay, just shh. And I really had to check myself. I said, wait a minute. Why am I am so full of judgment of my son and his behavior in golf that it's inappropriate, that it's not acceptable, that it needs to change. And more so than any other golfer that on the course, right? So I had to, in that moment, I had to check myself. And I had to own what I was doing, and I had to let it go. And I had to give him the dignity and freedom to be who he is, and to trust the other people that he was going to be golfing with, and just to let the interactions unfold. And I needed to get out of his way. And so, yes, other parents are judging our children, and I'm going to invite you to consider how you are judging your child. And I just shared a very personal story that happened 2 weeks ago. The one person judging my son on the golf course more than anybody was me.
Yeah, that is a good way of looking at it, because I've never really thought about it. I think we do, but we don't know. Yeah. We are always like thinking, what is he? Why is he looking at myself? But we are not thinking, is he okay? Is he fine the way he is?
Right.
I remember somebody saying to me one day that we are the ones who stress so much. The children don't stress. We are busy thinking of how they should do, what they should do, how they should do it. Well, the person, the kids themselves they don't even think about it. They're just living.
Yeah.
But we are here so tensed up. Oh my God, don't do this. So you see, we are trying to alter the way they are living because we think we are helping them, but actually we are making ourselves stressed. And
that is work, Ruth. That is exactly what I work with parents on. And that is called projection. We will project onto our child, and onto anybody. We will, the things we cannot accept in ourselves, that are too hard for us to look at inside of ourselves, the things that we don't like in ourselves, we will find in other people, and we will fix them in other people because we don't have the strength to deal with them inside of ourselves. So the way I was behaving on the golf course with Charlie was projection. I was, projecting my own discomfort onto him and fixing his behavior instead of working on my own behavior. So interesting, right? But anyway, that is really true. So it's true with all children. We want our children to be a lot of the stuff we never were. And boy, does that show up in special needs parenting.
Also, I wanted to say something to parents or caregivers and teachers. This is specifically for them. Back at home, we are always, trying to advocate for our kids, we know we have less professionals to work with our children, but how do we engage with teachers so that the other children within the facility can be able to accept our children? So it starts also with us educating the teachers, and teachers trying also to help us on the other hand with children. We can, so sometimes I would say teachers should also be able to accept these children in any stream they are and try to work with them, because if a child is in your classroom and this child has a disability, you have to work around this child just like any other normal child, so that the other children can be able to accept this child, and they will always offer help to
Yes.
this particular child. But when you have a child and with difficulty and you're like, oh, I don't know how to work with this child, so I will just give this child what they need to work with and then go ahead with the rest of the children, which is really not fair.
What you're saying is so true, so interesting. In my journey, again, my son is now through with school. We made it through the whole process. The thing I learned pretty early on, fortunately, is the most important factor was the way I was treating Charlie. It was very indicative. It was very instructional to others. So, examples. If we'll go back to the golf course situation. If I show up in the classroom, dropping Charlie off at school, and the teachers and the other parents see me constantly redirecting him, constantly, don't do that, do this, redirecting him, that is giving away that the whole message is, I am uncomfortable with who my child is. It may not be safe to be around him, and he's not okay the way he is, and he needs lots of redirection. So that's the message I just showed the whole world, right? And so I'm telling people, okay, so that's the way you should be treating my son. So here is another example of a different way that I think is more indicative. So we walk into class, and Charlie would pick up a toy or go to an area of the classroom where you typically don't start. And instead of saying, come back here, it's not, that's not the area we're starting in today. You're supposed to be over here, stand on the circle, all the instructions of what you should be doing. Just to relax a little bit as a mom, go over there, look at the thing that's intriguing him and share the interest. Respect him in that moment. Say, yeah, isn't that the coolest thing you have seen? I mean, I love the way it moves. And if he's not verbal or she's not verbal, help her, explore what it is she's fascinated with in that moment. Mm-hmm. So one, it's slowing down. It's acknowledging the essence of the child, the humanness of the child. It's just being more accepting and less focused on what they should be doing and more interested in the nature of the human being. Then, after you've shared a moment with the child, again, this is mom dropping child off at school in the morning, then gently redirect back to where the classroom is starting. So it's very different. I have gone through in the early phases where I would go in and really, boom, try to get Charlie in the mold right away with the rules, and and that sent off a certain message. And then I just figured out that, wow, if I want people to be kind and compassionate, to lighten up a little bit, to see the little boy in this person, well, I was going to have to do the same thing. And so I would really invite parents to consider they are the greatest guidebook on an instruction manual on how to work with their child. And it's just an attitude.
That is really true. It's all about us working hard with. For me, I will say working hard with a teacher. Like, we really have to work hard with them. We might not have all the answers, but and the teachers should at least should try and be accepting.
Yeah.
That's where we start with advocacy. We can't just advocate and then we don't work with the teachers, and when it comes to our children, we can't blame the teachers and say, oh, they don't do this. But if we really work with the teachers hand in hand, I think goals can be met. It can take a long time, but at least one thing will be achieved, which is acceptance in the school, and at the same time educating the children around this child. And that's why in Kenya I was looking at the some of these public schools that have children that are special needs. They're not really equipped well, and I don't know how the government works around this, but you find that most of the special needs schools are not equipped like the regular schools, and it's just a sad situation. Now you see that difference where you have the regular school equipped, and then you have the special needs that is lacking so much stuff. Now you see already the way you're putting other children to look at these children, it's looking at them differently because they don't have what we have. So that's why they're treated that way. And that is the wrong thing. If they were all treated the same, I don't think there will be so much judgment or not so much inclusion. Because see if it's a school.
You say something, and it's true about acceptance of our children in schools. And I am going to challenge parents and say, do you know where that begins? Acceptance of our children in schools begins with acceptance of our children by us. And that's hard work. Many of us feel that, oh, wow, well, this wasn't my plan. I have given, this child is in my family. We've given birth to this child. I love this child. And my job is to fix this child, to raise this child, to get this child prepared to live in our world. And we really develop a very strong relationship with the diagnosis. And we are actually not so accepting of who they are. In fact, we work very hard to change who they are, many of us. So it's a fine line. I mean, yes, we want our children to grow and to be all that they can be, but we must accept them. There's a really beautiful quote I want to read to you.
Okay.
This is my dream. This is my dream. Go and love someone exactly as they are, and then watch how quickly they transform into the greatest, truest version of themselves. When one feels seen and appreciated in their own essence, one is instantly empowered. The energy that our children receive all day long, just on an energetic level, if you just for a minute live inside of their experience and imagine the energy they feel all day long, it's an energy of disapproval. You're not doing it right. Do it this way. I don't really care if you're tired right now or interested in something else. The schedule says you must be doing this right now. I mean, that is all day long. And then there's sometimes a great deal of resentment about their very existence, because some parents are so burned out and not taking care of themselves. And when you give love from a place of depletion, it turns into resentment. So kids receive a lot of that energy. They may not hear those words spoken to them, but on an energetic level, they're getting it. So we parents can do a lot of work to change that experience for our children by coming into acceptance of it ourselves. That it's okay that we have a child with autism. Our families are okay. Our families are lovable. We are lovable as moms, even though we have given birth to a child that it has, conditions and issues. And so the acceptance work begins with us.
Wow, that's really, it's really interesting the way you put it. It has to start with us.
It does. And it takes a lot of courage.
It does. And I appreciate all your advice. It's really, it's really interesting just listening to you, especially that last part where you did the quote and then you had to explain all this love and depletion. You know, it's really true. You know, coming to
Yeah.
think of it, like when you listen and think about it, is so, yeah, like we really have to accept our kids with what they do. This
Yeah.
schedule, sometimes we make it like a routine, but we have to let them be at some point, do what they need to do.
Yeah. We need to grow into greater comfort in who they are. And I have had to, I have had to live that journey too. And in fact, I spent the first years of my son's life working very hard to change him, really, to develop skills where they were weak. And, and that's not bad, but that is absolutely what my intense focus was. Interestingly, in the last 5 years, my focus is the 180. I am so very aware of what Charlie is here to teach me. Like on the golf course that day, when I was trying to get him to speak less, to connect with people less, to disengage with people, to be quiet, to be invisible. That's how that day started for me, golfing with Charlie. And at the end, I'm like, Charlie, as I watched him interact with people, enjoy, compassion, he was fully visible, fully sharing his heart and himself the way he wanted to. He didn't care about the roles, he just was joyful. I was watching him and I was saying, God bless that child. If I could be so free in sharing my love and my compassion and my interest in humanity as he is, I would be a greater expression of myself. So, 20 years ago, I would have been, and I started that day really trying to change Charlie's behavior. And at the end of the day, I was looking at what he was teaching me as a human being.
Wow, that's really yeah, that is something. We should actually look at it that way. Like we all have, it's not easy for us, but I think we should bring in some positive energy
Oh,
to our
yeah.
children, just let them be at some point, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah.
and not to so much worry. We already know, we already worried about how their future is going to be,
Yeah.
but we have to accept, like we have to live with them day by day and accept just how it comes. Once we accept them, and I think it's easy, it's a bit easier just to live with them. Like when I travel with my son, I don't even think twice about his meltdowns, or
Yeah.
I remember when we were traveling, not the year before, but the year past, and he had a meltdown in UK because when we were doing security clearance, and this boy just lost it, and
Mm-hmm.
we had a few minutes to catch the next flight.
Mm-hmm.
We missed it because so the attendants in Heathrow were really nice. They rebooked us, and even after they rebooked us, they made sure we were the first ones to go in. So
Mm-hmm.
they understood. I was so stressed, but you see, my kids were okay. They were like, "You
Yeah.
have to take it easy. Let him," because we couldn't get him out on the floor. We try. He's so strong,
Yeah.
so he was fighting and fighting. So we had to,
So you
and
just
you
had to
can't board with
accept
him.
what was happening.
Yes, and you can't board with him like that. So we had to
Yeah.
just,
You
I
had to
was
work
like,
with it.
yeah, we just had to let it go. But after maybe an hour, he started coming down after all the scratching and biting and everything.
Mm.
So when it was like 30 minutes or 20 minutes to boarding time, they came and they let us board. By that time he was calm. So I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes we try to fix things which we can't. We just have to work with them because we really don't care
Surrender.
if he was overwhelmed with all the
Yeah.
hours we had already done. And we
Mm.
are trying to make him keep quiet, but he just wanted to let it out. So
Right.
we
And,
just let
and then when they feel our energy and our incredible stress and our
it.
discomfort, it just escalates, right?
It's
And so the question
really.
is, so how do you do this? So we're talking about these actually very deep issues, right? And so when you're home parenting alone and and life is so hectic and crazy, how do you take this time to reflect and have these aha moments? How do you do it? And I think the answer is you need community it's hard to do it alone. You need to be in groups. I facilitate groups of moms where we have this intimacy, emotional intimacy, and we share these truthful things that we're learning. We're very vulnerable. And we talk about, really that issue, that was really mine. I was the one who was uncomfortable on the golf course, not the other golfers. It was me.
That's true.
And to put it out there and to be honest, and get it out of me and onto the table and into the light, so that I can transform that. That's the method. Anyway, it's been such an interesting conversation. I hope that
yes. Yeah, I know we had to reschedule the rest because of everybody had they had something that they had to do last minute, or so it's okay. We will reschedule, and I hope you'll join us the next session. And thank you so much, Sean, for taking your time. It's always interesting to hear you talk and give advice. Our journeys are all different, but one thing in common is autism.
Yes, and learning. We're all learning. So thank you so much. I really enjoy your panels. I learned so much from your incredible guests. And
thank you so much, Sean.
And I will continue to listen. Thank you for teaching me. Okay.
Thank you so much. Bye, guys. Thank you for watching and listening to Sean talking. I think you get a little bit of what life is all about and what you can do if you get encouraged by her words. Like me, it's good to take advice from each other, and always look for groups or talk to somebody when you have burnout, when you're going through something. It's not easy. Our journey is the hardest, but we have to find ways of making it easier. So, guys, thank you for keeping us on this real topic that we've just done. And I hope Sean will come again when we schedule another panel. And you guys have a great day, or great night, or great evening, wherever you are. Thank you for keeping us company. So bye, Sean.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.